So what happened on Autoroute 1? One PR, that may be a PR, throwing exception when an invalid character is being saved into infoset. Okay, yeah, so that's an old issue. Sometimes some weird chars can be going through the XML validation and be stored in a database, and then it will break when it tries to render it. So now it's breaking before it saves it, and that's it. You see, these are accepted in XML, but if they are less than 32, then if they are not that, they should not be accepted. That's it's an old issue, but now it's fixed. Good job. Then that's the only thing that was done last week on Autoroute 1. Autoroute core. More things. Okay, dev branch. Dev branch is the one on the left. So what do we have? This one was talked about, new ManageHttps permission for the HTTPS module. So only those with the permission can manage the settings of this module. Add render property on content item types. Oh, I went crazy and merged some old PRs that were ready for a long time but waiting for beta 3 to be shipped. So this one, most of the work was done by Jean-Thierry. The idea being that we simplified the way views, shape templates are rendered, because the assumption was that it should be very easy to render a shape, and the way it was done was more complex than necessary. So we looked into how to refactor it to make it simpler, and it's now simpler. And why we looked into making it simpler, it's because the initial goal was that in GraphQL you could have a property on a content item that's called render, that will be the build display of the content item, the rendering of the shape from build display of the content item with any display type. So let's see where it's done and how it looks like. I can do a demo after that. I haven't tried it in a long time, but that should still work, and it was merged, so that should be fine. And you see locations where we need to render shapes, like when we render an email. The code should be simpler. So this is what was there before, and now it's just shape execute async. Okay, display helper shape execute async. That's all you need to do from a shape to render it. Before, we needed to create a view context, a display context, get the current request. It was lot of work. Now it's super simple. One line of code using a display helper. The display helper, the iDisplay helper. Okay, so that's the goal. Make it much simpler to render shapes. So demo. I will show the render in GraphQL. That should open some nice scenarios also. So that's this commit, fixing content picker with breakpoint. Okay. Yeah, two were not aligned. I saw the screenshot. The content picker was not aligned with the other controls on the page. There was some margin or something like this. This one added graphiql-explorer to the GraphQL page. This one we need to see also. This is awesome. GraphQL-explorer. add Codemirror Liquid editor to Autoroute Pattern setting. That will also prevent compilation issues. It will validate the model, and you can see that when you edit a pattern for Autoroute, it's a liquid template, and also Jasmine removes any extraneous lines, but this is this line of code which is interesting, like, no, not this one, another one, yeah, this one, that removes any line feed and carriage return to have a nice liquid template, though it will stay on one single line. Update navigation item text, Google ID, CSS, HTML. Okay. Content fields predefined list, fix cursor on delete button. Why does it say that I wrote that? I don't even know what it is. That's weird. Why is it called content fields predefined list, fix cursor pointer on this button?
I remember doing that one.
Why is it assigned to me?
I'm not sure.
And what is it? But the diff is super weird.
Yeah, there was the same issue with when we were doing the culture selector with view.js, where the href was not there, and that's why the link was not displaying, the button was not displaying in the same color. So I just added an href on the anchor. This is why the cursor pointer was not appearing, and I cleaned up the code, but the diff here is really different. I don't know what it is.
It looks like a mix with the PR from Jean-Thierry about the render. You see, it's like, that's weird. It's a merge commit. That's why. This is your change, but it was another merge commit instead of a squash merge, squash rebase. That's why.
Okay.
That's weird. But even, oh, and that's why it's on my name here, because the actual work here is on your name, but this commit, which is a merge commit, is on my name. That's why. Must have done it with my phone, and I didn't see the button. Okay, it's weird. Refactoring supported culture. So this we talked about last week, I think, but it has been merged. The idea being that we wanted to simplify the way you get what is the current culture, the current default culture and supported culture. And we still need to do the recipe step. We haven't done that. User cannot reset password unless email confirmed. So now you can reset. So I think the issue was you can't reset your password if you haven't confirmed your email, even though the option was not set. So now it's fixed. Replace, that's we talked about. Fix preview not updating on TextField with type predefined field. Yep. So whenever we do a new editor, we need to be careful about having a custom property. Content preview select. Is that this one? Probably. Content preview text, content preview select, so that the preview can refresh itself when there is a change in one of the controls. So this editor did not support that, so now it's done from Peter. Fixed orderBy and where filter is in GraphiQl-Explorer, so we'll see that later. Added GraphiQL support for localization parts, so nice job. So we can do at least the localized versions. of a content item, I assume, at least the culture and the localization set. Okay. Yep. Then merge this one from iKill, adding the Facebook SDK and also all the widgets for Facebook, including comments, comments widgets. So lots of things for Facebook. It was an old one also. Nick Schoening, who found that the repository we were linking to was the wrong one, so now he fixed it. Jean-Thierry found some calls, async calls that were not correctly awaited, some more. It's fixed. It was creating concurrency issues. I can see some more merge commit I messed up, again on my phone I assume. Should not use my phone to merge. So this is the one we just talked about. This one, extend Facebook documentation because it was missing documentation. Clear content item element cache when updating a field. So this, I need to test this technique, which triggered this issue. Let me show you what it's doing. This is the PR. Okay, fixes this one. So what James is doing is not using the content definition UI to create a content type. He creates a part, a strongly typed part, that inherits from content part, and has properties which are fields, well-known content fields. Okay? Which means he has access to this blog post class as a static class. I mean, as a class that exists in the code, and then you have static typing, and then you can have IntelliSense on that whenever you load it. And yet, it's not a custom part where you will define a custom driver and everything. It's just a standard part without any driver. But when you start editing a content type which has that part, all the fields will still get their own editors. So you still get the editor experience of dynamic fields and parts and types, but you define it by code, which means you have all the IntelliSense for that. And you don't need a mock class or whatever to map the properties to actual classes. And then in a and I assume it's using decoupled. Yeah, exactly what we're doing in this case. Yeah, in the decoupled scenario, you create a new app and your classes like this, and then when you render, when you query, for instance, for a content type, you know it has this class as a part, and you can get IntelliSense for everything, even the fields inside. So actually, you get IntelliSense for the field it has, and then the type of the field is also well known and statically typed, which means you also have IntelliSense for the fields themselves. So if you are using a Razor pages or views, then you have full IntelliSense over all your content types, and that's super nice. And when I say content type, usually the content type you created matches directly the part that you created. So you can create a type called blog post and assign it the blog post part, and that should work beautifully. You also created the index directly for this type to be able to query just these kind of types. So you have one table per type, and you can then query them. just only deal with, I assume, filters directly for the field values. You see, you can also, super nice actually. You can even highlight post. You see, highlight post is a field, a Boolean field, so it's also indexing the field value. So you can query on that, which today you can't do with the dynamic types until we have what Jasmin has done with the dynamic indices for fields. But still, even that thing is more optimized than a dynamic table we could do, because we already have only the column of what of the field type that we want on the same table. There is no join. Give me all the blog posts that are highlighted. One SQL query, just because you're also creating the index for that. So that's super nice way to do a decoupled site with custom types. It's not very complex, it's just straightforward. You create your model object or business object, and then you create an index because you want to query this thing by those fields. It's not even using apparently the content item index, though we could. So just to optimize the queries, so you get the best performance you can get from the database. And you get the best experience in Razor. That's super nice. Never thought about it, but I assume because, so how does it find all these fields? Just because internally the content item JSON object has the properties, and then we will be able to match with the part, find the type and the editor for that. That's how it works. I didn't even know it would work like this. Super awesome. But by doing that, he found an issue which he fixed. That's great. We need to try that. That makes it a decoupled way, and you can even create modules like this, like create a blog module that will contain static classes for blog posts and everything. Looks nice. Thank you, Jean-Philippe. You were faster than us. Sam Michelson is not using Skype for business. For richer experience, switch to Teams or start a Skype meeting. Is it a message for myself? Are you using Teams, Sam? Or are you using another Skype? What are you using? You just clicked on the link and it opened in Teams. On the web one. I'm asking because I wonder what will happen when it still looks like Skype on desktop. One day. Yeah, about this, that's an awesome technique, and this commit fixes an issue with this technique and the recent change we did for caching all the inner parts that are already instantiated in the content item. Update shell container creation, a big PR from Jean-Thierry, big PR. Important one. No, this is not the big one. Yeah, this one optimizes how the dependency injection services, dependency injected services are constructed for pertinent, duplicated. So you must have found some issues and fixed them. Working on shell scopes, this one is important. So the idea is that every time we get a new service provider for a new service scope, which is a unit of work for the DI, we will raise some events after that so that we can dispose some services and or classes that have to be disposed after each service scope, for instance, or do custom things after each service scope is disposed. For instance, when in a service scope you have a new iSession instance, like a new database call, we need to commit asynchronously these call commit asynchronously on this session automatically when before the scope is disposed. Okay. Otherwise, disposing the scope will dispose the session, which will call commit async, but in a non-async scenario. So it can block the thread. So this is why we want to be able to intercept it before and call it asynchronously before the service scope is disposed. So now what's done is that the service scope is wrapped into a shell scope that has support for that. So when before we dispose the shell scope, we can call asynchronously all the events we can register on a scope. And is there a nice example here on how it's done? So in this case, shell scope services. So shell scope is a static. So services is a static class, a static accessor on shell scope. Where is shell scope to show you how it's done? Shell scope. Here it's a service scope and using async local. So if you see current async local. So here if we go to services, it calls current.serviceProvider. So it will always resolve what is the current shell scope of your context. So you don't have to care about that. And using async, you can pass a func resulting in a task, so an async call, and then it will resolve the current one and dispose it after having executed all the before dispose async, which is the set of tasks to execute before this thing is disposed. Okay, that's the idea. But it should be transparent for any piece of code you've written so far. Async tweaks to, this is the merge commit, and I think the changes are done where? Here. So we just removed all the async await keywords from our invoke async. The only difference is that it won't allocate the task in this case, and it will also prevent from hiding the actual exception source. Otherwise, the exception will appear to come from this method instead of the actual method here. It should not change anything in terms of behavior. Add documentation for overriding views, just to explain, so from Jean-Philippe, to explain what type of files you can create if you want to override a view from a theme. A view coming from any module from a theme. The idea is that in your views folder, you use the name of the module, then the folder name of the view, and then the name of the index. So if your original view is in views admin index.cshtml, in your theme it will be views name of the module admin index.cshtml. That's what you need to remember. Fix broken link in content localization when no cultures are selected, from Dean. Because we changed the culture. Link to the rendered pages on readthedocs, link to the rendered pages. So the link was wrong apparently. Fixes liquid controller views. Yeah, there was an issue with the 404, I assume. Remove that code that is not used. Add view button to media library items. Good idea. So when you are in the media, the assets page, and you select an item, you can see the thumbnail, but if you want to get the full URL or to view the image completely, there is now a view link to that. Add media assets GraphQL query support. So now you can query the assets files from GraphQL and update a permission. Copy paste, which is wrong, but Jean-Thierry found it and fixed it. The demos. what do we have? Does anyone have demos to do? Not specifically, so I will show you the GraphQL improvements. I will need to clone and to start it. I don't see my taskbar again. How do I do that? I never know. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I never know how to get my taskbar. One day when he wants to show it, Michael. So I know that Gabor made a blog post about it. So if you look at the Lombic blog, you can find an article about what different widgets were done and how to use them. At least we have that. But next time Michael is on the line, we can ask him to give us a demo. So that is updated. Now I need to find my taskbar. I didn't have to find my taskbar. That's good. Thank you, Gabor, for the link. Oh. Nothing works. Oh my god. What was done? Oh, it's running npm. That's weird. Okay, I must have broken something, so I think I will use PowerShell. Because I have very recent SDK and I must have broken something with Visual Studio. Okay, let's run it. So by the way, if you do .NET Run, it will try to restore and rebuild. So what you need to do to have the best perf is something like this. orchardcore.cms.web.dll. So you point directly to the DLL which has been built and this will be super fast startup, you see. So I will go in the HTTPS, otherwise we might have cookie issues. I'm on the wrong computer. Chrome. I already have a site which I don't want, so let me del app data, do it again. Chrome, this. I want a blog. Now I will enable GraphQL. And in GraphiQL, we have the new Explorer. So this is super useful because you can see directly all the things you have access to, the type of queries you have access to, instead of just doing here control space and listing that. And you can build stuff like, okay, so let's say we have nothing, and let's say we want all the blog post. You expand it, so it creates a query on blog post, and you can say I want the display text here. Let's run it, and you see you have directly all the data without having to type anything. So if you don't know how to write a GraphQL query, then you can get some help from there, and you can also see whatever you have access to. So and you see here, so blog post has a markdown body. So if we expand it, it says okay, markdown body, but what do you want in a markdown body, because you can't access it directly. The default being the markdown, which is whatever has been typed by the user, but this is markdown. Okay, we don't have a good example here, but if you want the HTML rendered by the markdown, you get here the HTML rendered. Okay, this is an extension on the markdown body part that we provide for GraphQL to get the computed HTML from the markdown that is typed. Okay, in the same way, now you get render. This is what I wanted to show you. So now if I click render and I execute that, you get the render property of a blog post, which is how does a blog post render. So I don't need the markdown body anymore. You don't even need the display text actually, so I will remove that. But display text and the render, you see this is a full HTML of the page with the title and everything. So exactly like you would have if you went on this page. So if I look at the source code, you see head meta UTF-8 with the title demo man must explore. If I go there, title demo man must explore. So this is the same code that is executed, including the layout in this case. Is it including? Yes, this is including a layout for the blog post. And this way you can even create custom, let's say you could create an app, a mobile app that will render different content items on the server side using the theme of the server side, even if you are not navigating on the actual website. You can extract stuff. Or another idea, you could create a tool that will browse all your content items, because you can have all the content items. Let's say, oh, let's list all the blog posts, okay? And you have the content item ID and everything. And you can also render their HTML. So you could even create a static version of the site, because you can list all the content items and the menu if you want, and the links, and replace the links with local links if you want to re-enable navigation and locally. So you could create a static export of the site with this property using GraphQL. So with just HTTP queries, you can do a script that will generate every content item as a different page, without having to crawl the site like a bot will do. You can just point to every pieces of content item you want, and you will have them. Like if you know you have a blog and a blog post, you can first call the blog and then call all the blog posts and create every page you want. Okay, so here article, display text, just to show that we can we combine the two of them. So here, if on the blog post I remove render, beautiful data, we have the blog post and the article. Well, the blog post list and the article list. Okay, just by checking some boxes here. Super useful. So let's remove that, and let's remove that, and test the new feature that James added, which is media assets, and you can list all the media. There are no media in this thing. Let's go and add one. Or more than one. Okay, now we have media. So if I go back there, where is it? This one, and we select again, we have all names of the files, and we can have the public path directly. You see here. This is a filter. So let's say you want everything that has, okay, let's try that with something else. We just have one blog post. Let's do that on content item. So query content item. Oh, this is for one content item. So you have to, you see here, when it's an input, you can pass some text. So content item ID, you could pass a content item ID. So for instance, if we know the content item ID of the blog post, and I will select all my content items, but I know one content item ID. You see, beautiful. And these are the, I don't know how it's called, the extensions. So in this case, we know that if it's a blog post, then include the author. Okay, on blog post include the author, and that's the case. And if it was an article, you might want to include the, I don't know, subtitle, but it's not. So if my query here would include many types of content items, you could then say also include that for blog post, also include that for article, and so on. Super useful, and everything is done through the checkboxes. That's super awesome. It's crazy. Recent blog post is a query, so you see, you can even now see that directly. Like, you can have access to your predefined queries on the server side to query them and pass the parameters or the. Oh, that's great. So if I do that, this is the, let's fix it, recent blog post, and you want the display text. You will have only one, okay, but that's super useful, super useful. What are the parameters? I don't know. I think you can also do the where and everything. Yeah, first, order by, where, so article, where. Oh, look at that, all the filters we added. So if you select recent blog post, you see where you can, so where with the end expression between the display text contains man, the end, and I don't know, the owner is admin. So that should work. That doesn't work. Display article, blog post, play. That doesn't work. Display text in man, owner, admin. Maybe the owner is not. Yeah, that should be it. That's weird. And where, blog post. So if I remove the where, it contains man, and the owner is admin. So that should have worked. We should look into that. That's weird. That should have worked. But you get the idea. That's how to use the GraphiQl-Explorer. Super nice addition. Image is a content type. Menu. Let's list the menu for fun. Here is the menu. Oh, we clicked on render. Render is selected, and you can have access to menu item list and the menu items, which can contain also menu items and so on. And then you can select link menu item, URL, name, but we need to do that at the first level. I assume menu items. I don't know how to use that here. I'm lost here. Menu items contains a menu item list. I don't know how it works with menus. Never done that. Okay, questions? I assume that's what I said. I will show GraphiQL-Explorer, render in GraphQL, so two different features that can be super useful, like rendering a static site or creating a mobile app. And when you want to extract directly the HTML from the content items in your mobile app, GraphiQL-Explorer to build the GraphQL queries without having to type anything, and everything is accessible, super useful. I think that's it. Questions? Good. Then this is the end of the meeting. More PRs to merge and triage on Thursday as usual. Thanks everyone. See you on Thursday.